Hey, good news. Report. This is from antiwar.com and Dave DeCamp. It says Justice Department's considering a plea deal for Assange. A plea deal could free Assange from prison. This is real. The Justice Department is considering whether to offer WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange the opportunity to plead guilty to a reduced charge of mishandling classified information, the Wall Street Journal reported on Wednesday. The report said that Department of Justice officials and Assange's legal team have already had preliminary talks on what the plea deal might look like. However, Barry Pollock, lawyer for Assange, said he has been given no indication that the department will take a deal. It is inappropriate for Mr. Assange's lawyers to comment while his case is before the UK High Court, other than to say, we have been given no indication that the Department of Justice intends to resolve the case, and the United States is continuing with as much determination as ever to seek his extradition on all 18 charges, exposing him to 175 years in prison. Under the Department of Justice indictment against Assange, he could face up to 175 years in prison under the Espionage Act for exposing U.S. war crimes by publishing classified documents leaked to WikiLeaks by former Army Private Chelsea Manning in 2010. If Assange is convicted, it would set a dangerous precedent for press freedom, since publishing information obtained by a source is a standard journalistic practice, whether classified or not. So what Julian Assange did was he got classified documents and then published them. That's what the New York Times does. That's what the Washington Post did. That's what the Pentagon Papers were. That's what called journalism. The Journal report said that if the Department of Justice offers a deal for Assange to plead guilty to a lesser charge of mishandling classified information, it would be a misdemeanor, and he could potentially enter the plea remotely without going to the United States. So that's what now they know that this is bad for them, because even people at MSNBC are saying what Julian Assange did was journalism. So even those people are saying it. So now the Department of Justice, what they want to do is they want to get a conviction. They want to go, look, he pled guilty. We got him. He did it. His time in London's Belmarsh prison, where he's been held since April 2019, would count toward his sentence, and Assange could be free shortly after reaching the deal. While such a deal could potentially secure Assange's freedom, it could still set a dangerous precedent, since it would criminalize the relationship between a journalist and his source. Kevin Gastala, author of the book Guilty of Journalism, The Political Case Against Julian Assange, suggested the U.S. could have leaked the talk of a plea deal to the press to portray Assange as unreasonable if he didn't take it. Basically, U.S. officials chat to the press about some possible plea deal for Assange when he isn't guilty of anything, of any crime. If Assange's team signals it would never be acceptable, then it is Assange's fault that he remains in prison. Officials can say he wants to martyr himself. Last month, Assange's legal team presented its case for an appeal to the UK Home Secretary's decision to extradite Assange to the United States, and a decision on whether or not he can appeal is expected to happen soon. The Australian government has been calling on President Biden to drop the charges against Assange, who is an Australian citizen. Some members of Congress have also been calling for an end to the persecution of WikiLeaks founder, including Representative Thomas Massie, who brought Assange's brother, Gabriel Shipton, to President Biden's State of the Union. WikiLeaks and Assange supporters are asking us Americans to add to the pressure by contacting Congress. Americans can call their House representatives to support House Resolution 934, a bill introduced by Representative Paul Gosar of Arizona that calls for the U.S. to drop the charges against Assange. Listen to this lying motherfucker.
Journalists bring vital information to light, whether that's reporting from a war zone or investigating corruption. The press has even uncovered itself disinformation campaigns. So, as part of promoting a resilient information environment, we're supporting reporters as they face repression and economic pressures. We're helping newsrooms implement stronger safety protocols when reporters are threatened. We're funding legal defense funds for journalists hit with expensive and baseless lawsuits that are meant to shut them up or shut them down. The United States is cracking down on the misuse of commercial spyware to surveil and harass journalists or human rights defenders and others, including leveraging sanctions, export controls, visa restrictions to hold governments and firms accountable. At last year's Summit for Democracy, we brought together 10 other countries committed to ensuring that this technology, commercial spyware, is deployed consistent with universal human rights and basic freedoms. This year's summit, we're announcing that half a dozen more nations are joining this coalition.
So that's the liar from the State Department, Anthony Blinken, and they pretend that they really love journalists exposing government crimes, as they're committing war crimes left and right, lying, and trying to kill Julian Assange. That's what they're doing. That's why he's in Belmarsh prison. And here's what Julian Assange has to say. Secretary Anthony Blinken says an independent and empowered press is the cornerstone for healthy democracies. Hey, fuck off. This motherfucker, says Comrade Misty, is Putin's buddy. Anything to add to that? That is good news, I guess, but it's also bad news. Because I bet you Assange doesn't take that deal.
Yeah, what I suspect is going to happen, and by the way, the verdict for whether or not he can appeal the extradition is set to come down tomorrow in the wee hours of the morning here in the U.S. So by the time most people watch this segment, we'll know whether or not he is going to be extradited or not. Now, whatever that ruling, obviously the charges by the United States government still stand, which means this question of will there be a plea deal on offer is still very much relevant. I suspect that if it's true that they're offering him a deal, it is because they do want a guilty plea. They want to validate this just absurd prosecution without the public relations nightmare of actually torturing a journalist to death. I think they think it's a win-win if they could just get him to plead guilty and let him go so they don't actually kill him, because that's what's going to happen at some point. He is in failing mental and physical health. It's just sadistic and sick and awful what they are doing to this guy. And I think, as you said, even a lot of mainstream media outlets, both print and broadcast media, are coming out and saying that this is wrong to do. I think the government wants to be able to validate their case by getting him to plead guilty and admit he did something wrong. That not only validates their case, but it sets, as Dave writes there, a very dangerous precedent moving forward, which is, I think, a precedent that they want set. They want to intimidate journalists. And him taking a guilty plea would allow them that victory and allow them to set that precedent without the sort of grotesque spectacle of actually killing a man over this, which is what they're going to do at this rate.
Wow, I didn't know that decision's coming down this morning. So yeah, by the time people watch this, they'll know if he's going to be extradited.
Yeah, they'll know if he's going to be extradited by the time people watch this, but the charges obviously still stand. So this question of will there be a plea deal or not, obviously that's not going to be resolved for a little while.
Okay, everybody check out Keaton and do Dissonance with our good pal.
DENCE, that's right.
Yes.
On YouTube and Rumble.
YouTube, Rumble, and a Substack, apparently.
And a Substack, yes, indeed.
So, okay, well, congrats on your 50,000 subscriber mark. You guys are on your way.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all your help, and thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, come see us do a live stand-up show. We're going to be in Stockholm, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, London, Oslo, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Cortland, New York, Oakmont, Pennsylvania, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Edmonton, Alberta, Vancouver, British Columbia, and Denver, Colorado. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.